Dzień dobry. I bardzo dziękuję, pani. We feel very welcome. Thank you. Thank you for coming. Thank you for giving up your morning to be here. Let me express my family and I's gratitude to the staff of the American Corner, to the university for hosting us. Let me just ask you at the beginning here, how many of you, by a show of hands, have been to some sort of American Thanksgiving event before? Okay, 1, 2, and my family. And perhaps you as well. Good. Anybody else? See any other hands? Well, I'm glad that you're here. Our cultures and countries share a number of, synonymous holidays and celebrations, overlapping traditions like Christmas. But I've come to realize how unique Thanksgiving really is. I don't think I'd given it much thought up until coming here, how uniquely of an American holiday this is. And usually I have one Thanksgiving every year. But wouldn't you know, our first year on on Polish soil, I'll be having 3 Thanksgiving celebrations this year. Did one last week, and we'll do 2 Thanksgiving celebrations this week. And we're in Poland. It's ironic, but lovely. Thanksgiving is a time of feasting, a time of gratitude, but I've come to realize just how unique Thanksgiving is. After I graduated from university, I went on to study at seminary and was ordained as a pastor, but I had a real passion, still do, for students in your age group. Because, listen, my worldview was so profoundly shaped during my high school and college years, I think particularly at university. I first, in pastoral ministry, oversaw a group of about 200 college students primarily, and we would have every year a Thanksgiving celebration near the university at the church that I pastored, and 300 studentów, about 300 students, około, would show up and we would feast. We would fill up this gymnasium and jedliśmy 20 wielkich indyków. Yeah, we would eat about 20 turkeys or more, and families would bring them in. I really like Thanksgiving. Bardzo lubię Thanksgiving. Ale I don't know. I admit, I find it a little bit amazing that you would find such a fascination with Thanksgiving. That you would come here this morning is a little bit amazing to me as an American. Maybe you came to this lecture voluntarily, or maybe your teacher made you come to this lecture. In either case, I hope to make this time worth it. I hope this next 45 minutes, I'm going to set my watch, I hope it's worth it for you. I want to tell you about heritage, background, a little bit about myself. This lecture isn't about me. It's about a portion of American history and even what implications there may be in that history for you. But I think it'd be helpful for you to have a little bit more context about me as a teacher first. And by the way, it would help me if I'm speaking too fast or if I say a word that you don't understand, please just slip your hand up. I understand at the end there'll be about 10-15 minutes dla pytania, where you can ask questions of me, but feel free to slip your hand up in the meantime, okay? Especially if you don't understand something I'm about to say or I have said. As I said, nazywam się Tanner Ripley. This is my family. Moja rodzina I ja przeprowadziliśmy się tutaj około 7 miesięcy temu. Okay? Mieszkamy w Grodzisławiecku, and we are so glad, so happy to be here. Uczy się polskiego codziennie, okay? I have a couple of my language tutors here in the back, the Mahoa family, and many people from our church helping me. We take private lessons in Warsaw. You'll forgive me as I stumble through my Polish language. I plan to incorporate some of it this morning. This is, as I said, my family, mam 4 dzieci. I played American football, futbol amerykański, dawno temu. Okay? This is a picture of the university where I played. Moja numer jest 59. So you can see myself there and up here celebrating a conference championship. This would be the first stadium that I ever played in. This is in Texas A&M. It's called the home of the 12th man. There's about 100,000 Luigi, 100,000 people packed into that stadium. This is my heritage. This is me, obviously, Jadana Kone? Konana, dzięki. And a picture there of Montana. This is myself and obviously two of my children, Reba. This is some of my heritage. This is great-great-grandfather. I come from a long line of cowboys. Not everyone in Montana is a cowboy. In fact, few people in Montana are cowboys, but I happen to fit that stereotype. So in the middle is my father, moje tata, and on either side are grandparents, okay? I just thought this would be a helpful graphic for you to understand Montana. You understand? This is my state, Montana, and it's almost exactly the same size as Poland, okay? Inna jest Polska, you have about 40 million people. W Montania, we have tylko 1 million people. Okay, so there's 1 million people in a much larger area. It's very rural. Here's what I want to talk to you about this morning, and here's my outline. If you're taking notes or if you have questions or if you're a teacher this morning and you want to give a quiz afterwards, here's your cheat sheet, okay? Imagine this. Dawno temu, około 410 years ago, roughly 410 years ago. I know it's hard to imagine that long ago. Wiem, niektórzy z nas nie pamiętają, co jedliśmy wczoraj na obiad. It's difficult to remember what you had for lunch yesterday, but try to think back 410 years ago. There's an event in 1609 called the Hampton Court Conference. And the religious atmosphere is thick. It's heavy, it's weighty. This is an important conference. Why? What I'm trying to give you here is some of the historical context for what we're going to talk about. 50 years earlier, in the mid-1500s, many English Protestants had fled England during the persecutions of Mary I. And during the reign of Mary I from England, also known as Bloody Mary, as part of her efforts to restore Roman Catholicism to England, many Protestants had been hung or tortured or had to leave the country. Now many had returned, and they were trying to learn, are they going to have sympathies? Is there going to be religious tolerance under the new government? And they had appealed to the government for, if you can understand this, a purer church. Well, King James, the new king, made it clear that he wouldn't support this purification of the church, and the group of religious separatists called the Puritans were unhappy about this. And so a group of them in 1608, the separatists left the town of Scrooby, England, and moved quietly to Amsterdam, into Holland, in search of religious freedom. Okay? So when we talk about this historical context, we have to ask the question, why? Dlaczego? Why did the Pilgrims set out on their journey? What is the historical context for all this turkey and gravy and mashed potatoes and stuffing? Why did this happen? Now, when I was in high school, less so in college, but especially in high school, I'm just going to tell you a little secret. I did not like history. It was only at a later date that I began to understand how important history was. I think that's typical of Americans, maybe less so Poles. I think you may be more in touch with your history than Americans typically are. But this is so important to understanding the background. They leave England, this town of Scrooby, for a desire for religious freedom. So they move to Holland. Well, how do they find Holland? They find it free of interference from the government in their religion, but they find it a very difficult place for their families to live. So the first reason they leave England is a desire for religious freedom. The second reason, though, that the Pilgrims get on a boat and go across the Atlantic is the pursuit of a society that would be good for their families. Pilgrim Puritan William Bradford commented on the difficulty of living in Holland. He talked about the great licentiousness of the youth. That's a massive word, but he wasn't liking the way that the young people were living in that area and the way it was influencing their family. Bradford lamented the evil examples around him and the temptations and the difficulty of the place. So England can't be home. Holland can't be home. Where should we go? Let's make a new England. That's what these Pilgrims, these Puritans thought. Let's make a new England. And so it was through England Puritan movement that Christian settlers came to live in a new England, and hence we have the Pilgrims of the Mayflower. Raise your hand if you've heard of the Mayflower before. Okay. This Mayflower was built not to carry people, but to carry supplies. It was about 90 meters long. It was about 30 meters long, 90 feet long. I'm still working on transitioning to the metric system, though I will admit it makes so much more sense than our system, doesn't it? It was about 30 meters long, 9 meters wide, weighed 180 tons. It was a four-mast ship. Okay, you can see this drawing of a four-mast ship here. It was carrying, anyone know about how many people? It was carrying about 90 people. Yes, just under 100. Yeah, 51 men, 20 boys, 20 women, 10 girls. Average age 32. Oldest age 63. Pilgrims got on this boat, and several other boats joined them, and they made an awful 66-day journey across the Atlantic Ocean. It was incredibly difficult. They averaged only I should have converted this one, miles per hour. That'd be about 3 kilometers per hour roughly, over 66 days. Halfway across the ocean, the main beam, the main mast, fractured and broke. They were originally headed for the Hudson River, but they were blown off course to Cape Cod, Massachusetts. And so finally, weary and travel-worn, they crossed the Atlantic Ocean. There's the map. And here's obviously a drawing of this picture. We can think of sort of this smooth day out at sea, sailing, drifting along, this peaceful adventure and voyage. Not so for these Pilgrims. Finally, they arrive on the shores of Cape Cod, Massachusetts. December 1620 was the year. December 1620. And they find themselves immediately in the way of this very harsh, very difficult, bardzo trudna zimna. Tak? Rozumiesz? Okay. Very difficult winter. It's humid, they don't have houses, and they decide to spend the winter on the boat. And so they spend that first winter on the ship, and 43 of the roughly 100 pilgrims die. They fall ill, they die of various diseases, hypothermia, malnutrition. They pass away so that by the following spring, just over half of the pilgrims are left. They try to plant corn, they try to plant agriculture that they know about or crops that they know about, but they struggle. So the initial attempts at farming, the European crops that they're familiar with, fail. Until, what happens next? Spring comes, spring breaks, and along come some of the Native Americans. In particular, one Native American called Squanto. Squanto happens to speak English because of some time he spent in Europe, and he teaches them how to plant crops that will thrive in New England, such as corn. And they cultivate these native crops and fertilize them with fish remains, and Squanto acts as an interpreter between the Pilgrims and the chiefs and tribes in that area. So his ability, Squanto's ability to communicate and to translate was a huge, huge part of the Pilgrims' success in their new land. Without Squanto, without some of the native tribes in that area, they would have struggled in a much greater manner. They may not have even made it. By November, so they go through the spring, they see some success in crops. By November 1621, there's 53 people still alive to celebrate the first Thanksgiving. Can you imagine? Just try to put yourself, here's an English idiom, put yourself in their sandals, in their shoes, in their moccasins, in their slippers. 53 survive. Can you imagine the immense sense of gratitude that would have been in them? Yes? They have something to eat. They have something to drink. They have friends in this friendly tribe that they've made peace with in a peace treaty. Mutual support and respect between this tribe and these pilgrims. What a thankful day it must have been. The Wampanoag tribe in autumn 1621 had a 3-day Thanksgiving feast with these English Puritans. About 90 from the tribe of Wampanoag and 52 English colonists ate. Do you know what they ate? Anyone know what they ate on that first Thanksgiving? Must have been this, right? Oczywiście nie. Obviously wasn't. There's various pictures, depictions of this event of arriving because it was so dramatic of an arrival and then a struggle. Here's a depiction of the gratitude of the arrival. And still a place is commemorated. Plymouth Rock, the landing place of the Pilgrims there. Another dramatic picture. Here's a depiction of this first Thanksgiving. Obviously, we don't have any pictures of that time, and this is sort of a romanticized picture of what it was like or was not like. But they ate on that day not turkey, not indik, but deer, yellen, ducks and geese, fish, like cod and bass, native corn that Squanto had taught them about. There was no sweet potatoes, no pumpkin pie, no mashed potatoes. What was their gratitude about? Surviving, mere survival. And also to the tribes who had assisted them, particularly Squanto, who had taught them these vital agricultural techniques. That's what they were thankful for. There's also a question of who were they thankful to? Well, the historical backdrop, again, is massively important. They were thankful to God because they believed that He had sustained them and kept them alive through these heartaches and difficulties and trials using these peoples and these circumstances. Okay. More depictions of what that first Thanksgiving might have been like sharing. We move to Module 2, the legacy of the Pilgrims. Just be storing up in your mind any questions about Module 1. Okay, I want to move to Module 2, which is the legacy of the Pilgrims. We're going from the historical backdrop, which I'm still going to touch on a little bit, to some of the contemporary, the modern implications, the more modern reasons that this should matter to you, that it matters to me, that it matters to Americans, and it might be of interest to you. Let me put it that way. Okay, thanks to additional ships bringing immigrants, it's estimated that there were roughly 300 ludzi living at Plymouth by the year 1630. So roughly 10 years later, there's about 300. And the colony grows from 100 to 300 to 3,000 over those next 70 years. And in Plymouth Colony, we have the seedbed of the American people and of the American government. We have about 35 million in America, 35 million direct descendants of Mayflower passengers, including our second president, John Adams, including Marilyn Monroe, including Franklin Delano Roosevelt, including Clint Eastwood, including your presenter this morning, Tanner Ripley. I'm a 9th generation, I lost count, grandson of John Alden. John Alden was one of the charter members of the Plymouth Colony in America. He was only 21 years old. Anyone here this morning 21 years old? Anyone 22 years old? Okay, good. So you just imagine, put yourself in these 21-year-old shoes, and William Bradford, who was the second governor of the colony, wrote that John Alden was hired as a barrel maker, a cooper, at Southampton, England. And John Alden hopped aboard this ship, and he took care of some of the construction, like the storage of food. And he had planned to go back to England after he got them safely across, but he decided to stay. And John Alden married, in the only marriage between the Pilgrims, married a lady named Priscilla Mullins about 3 years after they arrived. Okay, so that's what I just quoted from William Bradford. Here's a picture of my 9th generation great-grandfather, John Alden and Priscilla Mullins. Priscilla Mullins was an orphan after that first winter. Her mom, dad, and siblings had died in that first harsh winter. John became one of the purchasers and undertakers of the colony. He served as an assistant of the colony government. He served as a deputy governor, a treasurer, a member of the committee in charge of revising the laws. He was an important player, an important person, ważny ludzi, in that early days of the colony. John was one of the founders of Duxbury, Massachusetts, and owned several pieces of property there. John Alden died almost exactly to the month, 300 years before I was born. I told you there's 35 million descendants of the Mayflower, of those surviving 53 people. There's about 35 million, probably more now, descendants living in America. Our family is a little bit unique in that we possess something handed down. Here's the home of John Alden and his kindred, his offspring. We possess something handed down from John Alden to his family through the years. This is the family sword. And I don't know if you can read this, but stamped on the hilt is the year 1414. 1414. That means that this wasn't John's to begin with. It was handed down from him. So this is an artifact from history that's important in tracing our heritage and verifying our heritage right back to John and Priscilla. So this stays in our family and is passed down. I thought you might appreciate that this is decorative. This is called the hilt, or near the handguard of the sword. I remember growing up just looking at this sword with fascination and wondering at some of the weight and historical significance of it. You know, there's a legend that turned into a poem that might interest some of you who are interested in romance. Should I say it that way? And maybe you're interested in thinking about or reading poetry. One of America's greatest poets, Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, in 1858, wrote a poem called The Courtship of Miles Standish, in which he commemorated this probably made up, mostly made up, courtship between Miles Standish, one of the passengers on the Mayflower, my great-grandfather John Alden, and Priscilla Mullins. But the poem stuck, and I understand there's high school students here this morning. This poem, in many places in American classrooms, is required reading, okay? So that's one of the reasons these things have stuck around in our mind. The legacy of the Aldens, John and Priscilla, came to symbolize life together in marriage, resilience, hope amidst hardship, difficulty, and the beauty that a family, man, I love my family. I love my family. I love my wife. And when we moved here 7 months ago, that was a serious source of stability and hope and joy for me, and is to this day. They built a life together in a challenging environment, and so lives on the legacy of the Aldens. Let me talk for a moment about the seedbed, or the seed, you understand this language, of American democracy in the Mayflower Compact. What was the Mayflower Compact? Well, it's difficult to get an exact date, but około 10 dni before they landed, before the Pilgrims landed, they realized that they'd been blown off course. And so that the original contract that they left Holland with wouldn't be valid where they were. And they knew that not all of the people on the ship believed the same thing about God and government that they did. And so as a way of saying, here's what we're going to be ruled by, here's the laws and the statutes and the principles to which we'll agree upon when we land, they drew up a contract. And while it's not a constitution in the modern sense, the Mayflower Compact is significant, and then it's an example of early self-governance in America. It establishes things like majority rule and collective decision-making. And so when they drew up this contract, it is an important part. It gives us the ability to see into their minds and their thinking that would give freedom for people to practice what they believed, and protection from oppression from those people who didn't believe those same things. And those things hopefully are still held in America today. Did you know that America is the oldest democratic republic in the world? And do you know what the second oldest democratic republic in the world is? Poland. It's Poland. It's the one we're in. I think it's one of the reasons why our nations tend to have such a united and significant appreciation for each other through history. Yes? It's why those relationships have been strong and hopefully are stronger today than ever. That's certainly my hope. Okay, I want to transition a little bit, again, from some of the historical backdrop into some traditions today. Okay, here you'll see some pictures of moją rodzinę. On Thanksgiving morning, we would often, our family would, nie pamiętam słowo, run, biegamy, dziękuję. We would run in a race called huffing for stuffing. Huffing is an expression of exercise, and stuffing is what you eat on Thanksgiving morning. Or other places, the race was called the turkey trot. Okay, it was a comical way of saying, we're going to eat a whole bunch of food today. Let's get a little bit of exercise in the morning before we go. We would play card games, and here's some of the feasting that occurs on that day. Dużo jedzenia, tak? Lots of pies. Chyba ciasto? Ciasto. I ciasteczko, i indyk. Bardzo jedzenia. I think that Thanksgiving today in America has lost most of its religious heritage and history, and it's centered around family. It's a time where loved ones come together and express general gratitude. Sadly, even that is overshadowed by much of commercialism or materialism in America. Sales like Black Friday come to people's mind, in which people begin to think of things, material things, that are here one day and gone tomorrow, rather than things that are more long-lasting, like family, or things that are eternal, like God. I want to talk a little bit about the continuing legacy of the Pilgrims in America through some of the things that came out of what they believed, taught, and lived. I have, according to this, about 15 minutes left. Has anything been unclear, or let me just pause and ask any questions thus far or clarifications? Okay, thank you for your attentiveness. Okay, what can we learn from the Pilgrims? In fact, before I go on to what we can learn from the Pilgrims, let me just ask real quick. Children, anything that I've missed or that you would want to say about Thanksgiving that you appreciate? You can ask me a question. How did the boat not hit a rock? Dobre pytanie, ważne pytanie. They parked the boat out in the deeper water, and then they took one of these smaller boats in close, yeah? So that big boat didn't get, remember we were just reading the book of Acts when Paul is imprisoned on the boat and his boat hits the rocks and gets broken up by the waves. God saves them. But yes, so that's maybe what you're thinking of. They parked the boat out farther and then they took these little ones in. Because remember, there wasn't very many pilgrims to even bring in from this big ship. Thank you for your question. It's a good one. Any other questions? Okay. All right. What can we learn from the Puritans? Well, I don't know what comes to your mind. So, Miss Lee, what do you think, or what do you think about when you hear the word Puritan? But in America, when someone hears the word Puritan, they think of stop doing that. Quit that, young man. Stop having fun. This is what they think of in America when they think of Puritans. There's a grave misunderstanding about Puritanism. Puritans were not opposed to fun. They were not opposed to fashion. They were not opposed to sports or recreation or the arts or the physical world or education. In fact, it's difficult to find out everything that happened on that first Thanksgiving, but from some of the best details, it seems like there was sports and games and target shooting and celebration with the native tribes, such that there was great recreation and enjoyment together. Puritanism was a youthful movement, a vigorous movement, which began as a specifically church movement in response to the compromises that the Puritans believed were happening in religion in England. And so they believed that there was confusion brought to who Jesus was and what he did, and the Puritans sought to remedy that. They sought to fix that in their own way. What did the Puritans do? Well, the Puritans called for greater devotion to Jesus and higher standards of personal living and personal holiness in the church. So as a result of what was happening in England and in other parts of the world, a great migration, that's what it's called, a great migration of Puritans took place as many left England to find religious freedom in the New World of North America. In this sense, the Puritans are responsible for bringing even the Reformation to North America. Due to persecution in England, evangelical theology was established on American soil. In 1938, Perry Miller and Thomas Herbert Johnson wrote a book on the Puritans. And they wrote this: Puritanism, that is what these Puritans believed in their culture and thinking, may perhaps be best described as that point of view, that philosophy of life, that code of values, which was carried to New England by the first settlers in the early 17th century. Beginning thus, where it began, it has become one of the continuous factors in American life and in American thought. That's just a way of saying what they believed, what they taught is not insignificant in how it's shaped, and to some degree continues to shape America. Let me give you one example of this, if you find that in any way difficult to believe. Okay? Napshikwad, Harvard. Anyone heard of Harvard University? Okay. Harvard University is broadly considered one of the most prestigious, if not the most prestigious schools in the world, certainly in America. It was our first college. And it was established in 1636. As you can do the math, that's only about 15 years after the Puritans landed. And it was established by a man named John Harvard. John Harvard established Harvard to train Calvinist Puritan ministers. In fact, the original motto was Veritas Christo et Ecclesia. For truth for Christ and for the church. Later, the motto was changed to Veritas, simply truth, and so it remains. This is the signal, the emblem on Harvard University today. It has the largest academic library in the whole world, consisting of over 2 million volumes of books. But it all started with John Harvard's 400 books. No doubt many of those were devoted to Christ and to his church. It receives over $50 billion annually in endowments, making it the most wealthy educational institution in the world. 8 U.S. presidents, such as Franklin D. Roosevelt and John F. Kennedy. 8 signatures of the Declaration of Independence were Harvard alumni. And so places like Harvard have obviously continuing impact, not just in America, but even globally. But I just want to give you an interesting illustration. I hope it will be perhaps even Tchaikovsky, curious, fascinating to you as it is to me. In accordance with the vision of John Harvard, when he established Harvard as a school for training pastors, not so much unlike the school that I graduated from in California in training pastors, he established rules and precepts which were adopted in 1646. And he stated, I've put the small original part at the top, and I've used, can I say this out loud? I've used artificial intelligence to give me a modern, updated language. That way it's impartial. It's not perfect, but it's not me saying this is what I think it says. The original one's at the top, and I asked it to update the language. So let me read the updated one. Here's rule number 2. Every student should be clearly taught and strongly encouraged to carefully think about the main purpose of their life and studies, to know God and Jesus Christ, which leads to eternal life. Therefore, they should build their understanding on Christ, who's the only true foundation for all knowledge and learning. Since wisdom comes only from the Lord, everyone should take time to pray privately and ask him for it. So, Proverbs 2:3, which talks about the source of all wisdom being and coming from God. John 17:3 talks about how Jesus is the truth and the source of truth. Now, I don't know how that strikes you this morning. We're in an academic setting, and of course I want to respect that, which is why I've just borrowed from Harvard here. If I was to bring this up at Harvard today, I would be laughed out of the auditorium. I would be mocked. The irony is because this is about the only thing that you can't say on Harvard campus today. Okay? And I'm not mad about that, but I just want to illustrate how much things have changed since those beginnings. Yeah, there's just no question about what the Puritans or people like John Harvard believed. He believed, and I believe, that this is true, which is why I wrote things like number 3. Everyone shall so exercise himself in the reading of Scripture, the updated one. Everyone should read the Scriptures twice a day. They should be prepared to explain what they've learned, both in terms of language and logic, as well as practical and spiritual truths, based on what their tutor asks and their own abilities. Remember, the entrance of God's word brings light and gives understanding to those who are simple. Psalm 119. So we'll just kind of distill some of this down or synthesize some of this material for you. What the Puritans believed is what 2 Timothy 3:5 says. Beware of those who have the appearance of religion or the appearance of godliness, but deny its power. Paul says, avoid such people like that. The Puritans were striving for what Christ said about building his church. In fact, many of them believed their migration was divinely ordained. They viewed their journey as a part of the larger mission to spread Christianity, to establish a pure church from worldly influence. You might say in some ways that was successful, and in some ways that was unsuccessful. The Puritans called for greater devotion to Jesus, for higher standards of personal living and holiness. They abhorred, that's a strong word for hate. They hated hypocrisy. They hated things that looked and smelled of religion, but had no truth or substance or beauty in them. They were lovers of beauty and truth. And so they aimed to create what they called a godly commonwealth for their congregation, rather than a theocracy that impressed and imposed its belief on others. So they drafted the Mayflower Compact as a social contract that established governance without establishing a state church. That was important to them. It allowed for degrees of religious freedom and religious tolerance among the diverse group of settlers, even on that Mayflower. So their approach reflects understanding that governance should not dictate, should not determine your personal beliefs. but that there should be freedom to worship and practice as you believe to be true, which is what I believe also. I can't force you to believe in Jesus. I can't force you to believe he is who he says he is, or he did what he did, or that loving and following and enjoying him, a decision that I made when I was your age in high school and college, was the best choice that I could have made. But I can tell you that's what John Harvard believed, and that's what many of these pilgrims taught and lived out. I hope this has been helpful from a historical context, from a background context, from a learning about America context. There's a lot more information out there that I could have sort of brought into this time, but I wanted to leave plenty of time to interact with you and give questions. It could be about anything. It could be about America. It could be about cowboys. It could be about Yellowstone. It could be about, food. It could be about anything that you want, or any part maybe that I didn't hit on in this presentation that you'd love to talk more about. Okay, so just move to, dlaczego. This is a question I get asked a lot. Why did I come to Poland? Well, the motto of Harvard is my motto, Veritas Christo et Ecclesia, truth for Christ and the church. The verse that guides me in my mission is going out for the sake of the name. What name? The name of Jesus. It's a verse from 3 John 8. So a pure church and greater devotion to Jesus is my passion. My life is short. It's small. I have no great personal importance. Just because I'm a descendant of John Alden doesn't mean that I'm all that. But this is my life, my vision, my passion, my love. And thank you for allowing me to share it with you. So questions, Pytania, Thanksgiving, any of those things is open floor to you. Who's brave enough? Oh, thank you. It's very kind. Okay. Just put up your hand here. Questions this morning? Yes. Do I miss America is the question. Pablo, is it okay if I repeat the question?
That's perfectly okay.
Okay, thank you. The question is a good one. Do I miss America? I love America. I'm grateful that that's my heritage, and I'm grateful that I've come from there. There are aspects of America I miss, but my greatest loss is not, the hamburgers that I could buy at the local restaurant. It's the relationships that we left. So it's the wonderful church that I pastored. It's our parents and families. So do I miss America? Insofar as I miss those relationships, those are so dear and so precious to us, and that it has been hard. It's only been 7 months, and I'm just going to tell you, we really like Poland. I mean that sincerely. We've had to navigate some things here and figure things out, and of course we're still doing that, but we hope to be here, I want you to know, for some time. We've just thrown a number out of 10 years. Perhaps we'll be here. So we're not going anywhere fast. We do miss, what would you guys say? Do you miss any particular things about America?
Of course, what you said, family and friends.
Of course.
I miss our old house.
Hmm.
And our animals.
Moja najstarsza córka movie, she misses those things that I already said, like friendships, relationships, and our old house. Yes. We left about 15 acres. I don't know if that measurement means much, and horses and dog, cat, chickens, wonderful. I could show you pictures, but there was just a really beautiful setting. And so that open space, yeah.
Where did you guys live? What state?
We lived in Montana in a city called Great Falls. Yeah. My wife studied abroad in Salzburg, Austria, studied international business and marketing there, and traveled through Poland in 2008. Through Kraków and several other cities. And we've always had an affection, I think, to some degree for Central Europe. I first visited in 2018. We lived in Wrocław for 2 months in 2019, 2020. So, sweetheart, what would you say?
Other than what they said, the wide roads.
Yeah, the wide roads. The wide roads. Yeah, very good. Yes,
I have a question.
please.
I heard that Americans eat potatoes from powder, and are
Oh, so this is a very good question. The question was, I've heard that Americans eat potatoes from powder. Jak się mówi powder po polsku? Groszek? Proszek. Dziękuję. Groszek would be like the coin, wouldn't it? Proszek. It is true that some Americans eat potatoes from powder. How could they ever do such an evil? It's an abomination, isn't it? I confess that I ate potatoes from powder when I was in college. They were very cheap and very salty and very yummy. But we no longer do it. We mash our, is it puree ziemniaki? Uh-huh. But you have some wonderful potatoes here, and I'm sorry that we've desecrated them by making them into powder. It's a very good question, yes.
So when I lived in the US, my host family, we didn't have really plates. We were using plates.
Uh-huh.
Is it really common?
Okay. So when you were living in America, and can I ask when? Kiedy? 2 years ago. And gdzie? In Arizona. Okay, very good. I have relatives in Arizona. The question was, or the statement was, when I was in America for Thanksgiving, and I remember now your hand was up earlier, wasn't it? Thank you. We didn't have real place setting. We ate off of paper plates. Did I understand you correctly? And the question is that common? It's not common codzienna and everyday meals and everyday eating. Sometimes when we have very large meals with lots of people, rather than wash a lot of plates, we'll eat off of paper plates. It's kind of a szkoda, shame, isn't it, to eat such a wonderful meal off a paper plate?
My family eats this every day.
Okay.
I was so confused.
Oh, confused, yeah.
We had a lot of
I see. I see. So you eat off of paper plates every day. That would not be common. No, it would be common. It seems opposite. Like you would use the special plates for a special day. But no, sometimes we use papier talerz. Papierowy talerz. Dziękuję pani. Dziękuję. Yeah, great question, great observation. Maybe you can come visit again sometime and we'll serve you turkey on real plates. Okay. Other questions or comments, concerns? Yes, sir.
So, why exactly did you choose Poland? Like, was it just because you already lived here, or was there another reason?
Yeah, good question. Dlaczego Polska? Polski? Okay. Yeah, why Poland of all the places in the world that we could have gone? It's a good question, an important question in this sense. We had offers to go to other places like New Zealand or different places in the States where I could have moved to pastor. I think there's several reasons why we chose Poland. One is Brooke, moja żona, had visited here in 2008, as I said, when she was studying at a university in Austria, Salzburg. She had fond memories of it. You know, there's statistically, let me just be honest with you since you asked the question. Statistically, there's about 0.1% of Polish people who believe what I do. Okay, so I understand that my views and the things that I've spoken about this morning are extraordinarily rare, and depending on where I say them, even controversial. But if I believe them actually to be true, true in the sense of eternally true, then I think these things matter, and I can't think of a better place to talk about them. There's other practical considerations like pogoda jest prawie samo. The weather's very similar to Montana. This 4 seasons. I wouldn't do very good in sub-Saharan Africa because I'm a giant wimp when it comes to heat. Okay, I just melt. I could show you pictures of my beard just freezing with frost. It gets to 40 below stopni centigrade in Montana. Maybe only once every few years, but 20 degrees, 30 degrees below. So we didn't mind coming to a place that was cold. We love history, and Poland has such incredibly rich history. I have my bag at the back, but we're reading and studying a lot about Poland. We really want to understand your country better. We really like, and I think I can use the word respect, Poland. Warsaw is called the Phoenix city sometimes, in the sense that it's risen out of the ashes. And I've told people sometimes I think this is symbolic almost of all of Poland in some ways, because it's fantastic how Poland I'm not flattering you, I'm being honest, has risen with resilience out of its history and out of the last 30 years especially. I understand maybe some of that could even be controversial, but I'm amazed at Poland. Would you add anything else, sweetheart, to that? Okay. Thank you for your questions. How are we doing on time? Maybe one more, or we're okay? Okay, so yes, please.
What is the Polish people's reaction when you speak about them?
Oh, thank you for your question. Dziękuję za pytanie. Since my views are so rare here, what is the Polish reaction to my views as I have opportunity to talk about them? I would say varied, various responses, much like I would get in America. It's rare that I face hostility, though on some occasions in Warsaw I have. People have been aggressive or hostile, even as I try to remain hopefully gentle, tactful, wise, loving, but mostly fascination or indifference. Yeah, so sometimes indifference, because I think especially young people, when they think of religion as they're associating me with it, are also thinking about some of the difficulties that they've experienced with it. And so that brings some overtones of difficulty, perhaps in their past or their understanding. Sometimes indifference, just as I would meet with in America, what you believe is what you believe, and what I believe is what I believe, which is fine. But occasionally a real peculiar fascination. This is very different. Bardzo inna, I don't know how I'd say that, but very different from what I've understood. Could you tell me more? Again, we're not here to force anything, but we're here to talk about and to live long-term in Poland and to serve the church. Okay. So, thank you for your question. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
So, as you have lived for some time in Poland, how would you describe the language barrier, and is it hard to learn Polish?
Thank you. The question was, as we've lived in Poland for some time, how would we describe the language barrier, and is it a difficult language? Polskiego? Polski jest bardzo trudny język, ale dobry język, and in some ways even beautiful language. Again, I don't flatter. It's difficult. Of course it's difficult. I have a private language tutor that I meet with in Warsaw once a week. Poniedziałek I czwartek rano, a gentleman from the church comes over and tutors my family. And we watch YouTube videos on Polish, and moja żona I ja, poniedziałek I środa night. Wieczorem, dziękuję. Have online lessons and bardzo praca domowa. Lots and lots of homework. So I was in school, you understand, I was in school from age 6 to age 32, I think. I didn't take a semester off. I went from high school to university to Bible college to seminary. And I really like school, but I do have to say that Polish is pushing me. It's been challenging. I think one of the most difficult things is it feels like I'm moving slowly, krok po kroku, step by step. But one of the things that we really love, I mean this, we really adore about Polish people is they're so patient and so accommodating and grateful as we try to learn the language. So it's not like some places where it's just like, oh, you said it wrong, why are you even trying? Polish people are happy to help us. So if you would just keep being patient to us and speak to me like I'm 2 years old, okay, for now. Does that answer your question, sir? Thank you. It is. I found it difficult, but not impossible, right? Yes. You had a question.
So I wanted to go back to Thanksgiving's food, because you
Yes.
mentioned that the first Thanksgiving was not about pumpkin pie and mashed potatoes. So when
Prawda.
did this traditional set of dishes become established in the American tradition? Was it the 19th century or was it later? Do you know?
I don't know. It's a very good question. The question is, if they went from eating deer to here we are, just pumpkin pie and turkey, when did the transition happen? And I don't know. It's a good question. I would like to better understand that. My question is like, or my guess is like many traditions, slowly. Yeah, you can't have Thanksgiving without pumpkin pie. I have a Filipino aunt who came up to Montana from California to have Thanksgiving with us one time. She's a wonderful lady, and she made egg rolls for Thanksgiving for us. And it was a special and very different. We've always been a very multicultural family and enjoyed different cultures and different people groups. It's just part of our makeup, I think. But I was probably about my daughter's age, moja najstarsza córka, and I said, Mom, I'd love to have egg rolls, but I have to have mashed potatoes. Because you just can't have, I mean, you know how it is. Perhaps on Vigilia, you have to have your traditional food. Carp.
We don't eat carp all year long,
Uh-huh.
just that one night. At least that's what I do. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah.
There's no Vigilia without carp.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's special.
Yeah.
It's special.
It is. And I think even some of those things, this is a bit of a lament, I express this sorrowfully or sadly, but again, some of these traditions I think in America are going by the wayside as American football takes center stage, as material things like how big of a flat screen TV can you buy on Thanksgiving, those things take a more center stage. Poles really value family. And I think that used to be more of a value in America than it is now, and so it's difficult to see some of those things disintegrating, albeit slowly and not entirely, but there's change happening, yeah. Not always for the better. Okay, good questions. Any final questions? Brave enough souls in the back? Please, yes.
I would also like to circle back to the Mayflower.
Yes.
I don't know if you know, but we actually make our students read of Plymouth Plantation.
Oh, wow.
Fragments,
Excellent.
yes.
So they are familiar with Bradford.
Yeah.
Excellent. Bradford?
Yes.
Very good. Good journals he kept, right?
Yes.
Comparatively.
Yeah, because our students here in the English department, they have to take this mandatory course in American literature.
Wow.
And we start with Bradford.
Yeah, we start with
Wow, I
Bradford.
didn't know.
So I just wanted to say it's amazing to have you here.
Oh,
because-
thank
and
you.
Speaking about the legacy, because
Oh.
when we start the semester off with this text, they are not very enthusiastic.
Sure.
You put it mildly.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to thank you for
Sure.
bringing Bradford back to life.
Oh.
And saying that it is important that we
Oh.
know these traditions because they do influence contemporary
Absolutely.
America, as you
Bardzo ważne. And I suppose me trying to learn Polish is a bit like a Pole trying to learn 17th century English is even more difficult. The spelling is not consistent. The phonetics are varied. Yeah, Bradford took good journals, didn't he? And Alden was his deputy assistant for many years. So Bradford was kind of the front runner. It seems Alden was always kind of happy to play, if you like, second fiddle or second chair. And so he was. They had 10 children. They were by far the most prolific of the Pilgrims. So their heritage continues. Their son John was my first relative. I meant to put the family tree up there, but they had a Timothy, and in fact, my najmłodsza córka Isabel, Izzy for short, ma dwa lata. Her middle name is Alden, Isabel Alden Ripley, in memory of the Aldens. So, oh, that's fascinating. Thank you for sharing. Very good. Anything else? Any other questions? Yes, please. Oh, what is our favorite Polish food? Mój ulubiony,
Potrawa, danie.
potrawa dania. Dziękuję. Nowe słowo. Trudne pytanie. Lubię wszystko Polish jedzenie, ale bardzo lubię, or perhaps podoba mi się to, smakuje pierogi z szpinakiem. Szpinakiem, tak. I ser. Children, what would you say your favorite Polish food is? Ja też. Harmony is, we share that in common, don't we? And Megs? Same. Sweetheart?
Bigos is great.
Bigos. We like bigos. I naleśniki, Timek?
I like spinach pierogi.
Yes. We, always, zawsze, w poniedziałek, actually now w czwartek, na kolację, jemy tylko Polish food, only Polish food. And it's kind of English-Polish exchange here, isn't it?
Does it have any meaning to that Thursday day of the week? Like Thanksgiving, maybe?
Oh, no, I said Thursday, didn't I? I meant Tuesday.
Tuesday, all right.
Wtorek, dziękuję. And we only, at dinner, we can only speak in Polish. So we only eat Polish food, and we can only speak in Polish on Tuesday nights. And then on every Friday night, we have American food where I grill hamburgers and we talk in English. Okay, so, yeah. Great question. Thank you. Any other questions about our observations about Poland, our experiences, the Mayflower, the Pilgrims, any of this? Okay,
I have a
please.
question. How would you encourage all of us here to go to Montana?
Oh, please come and visit America. Yes. There's so few people who live in Montana, but you understand America is so vast in its culture and its food and its landscape. Not many Montanans, almost no Montanan has been to every state, but many, I don't know if I could comfortably say most, but many Americans have been to Montana. It's a popular place to go and visit. There's two parks, Glacier National Park, which in my humble opinion is one of the most beautiful places on earth. We've been all over the world, Australia, Turkey, Latvia, Laos, Honduras, Brazil. I've seen a lot of places. Glacier National Park is worth, if you go to America. It's just my observation, I could be wrong, it's only my observation, that many Poles want to go to a coast like LA or New York. I would just say you won't get the best understanding of America in those places. Comes some other places, the gentleman from, was it Nebraska this morning? Is he still here? He said he had to leave early, so he might have left, but was it Nebraska? Okay. He may say come.
Course on the Midwest this semester.
Very good.
Starting from the same premise.
Uh-huh.
Not only the two coasts.
Yes, yes. So Yellowstone, there's a popular movie, series sitcom, Yellowstone. Great cinematography, very low accuracy, okay? So don't take your understanding of Montana from Hollywood. Please come and see it yourself, okay? Okay. Well, special thank you to Veronica and to all of you ladies. Thank you for your warm welcome. I mean it when I say it's been our pleasure. I hope this has been of some help, some interest to you. Our family plans to stick around for a little bit afterwards. If we can talk or engage at any level with you, if we can be of any help, please let us know. Will one of you be closing the time down, or? Okay.
I guess we are not officially closing.
Okay.
We are not closing.
Okay.
We just
Thank you.
Okay. You're welcome. Okay. I to wszystko. I will wait up here and be happy to interact with any of you as long as you want. We have nowhere to go, okay? So thank you again for your attention, and you are dismissed.